On September 7, 2011, you savagely beat your child to the edge of death. For this, you must be punished. Please stand. I find you guilty of the offense charged. I'll set your sentence at confinement in the penitentiary for a period of 99 years.
From brutally beating innocent children to snuffing out innocent lives without a second thought, there is really no denying that some criminals have no conscience or morals to be found.
Why did you take the decision to pile the bodies on top of each other in a freezer?
What do you mean?
Why did you do that?
Well, I only had one deep freezer. I mean, take the decision to pile the bodies on top of each other. Where's she gonna go?
The following cases tell of the tale of some of the most brutal black women and hardened gangsters who learned their fate for their roles in some truly gruesome and shocking crimes.
Count one of the verdict to read, the jury find the defendant guilty of second-degree murder as included in count one. Signed by the foreperson of the jury. Mr. Murphy, is that your verdict? Mr. Aldridge, is that your verdict? Ms. Foster, is that your verdict?
Yes.
Some of these cases are truly just that horrific that they are sure to leave you speechless. The case of Shelby Isaac. The case of Shelby Isaac was one that shocked and puzzled the nation due to the bizarre motive she had for committing a very grisly murder. The then 18-year-old was involved in a triple homicide known as the Hair Weave murders.
We've been following this trial out of Tennessee, where the motive is a hair weave or hair weaves. The hair weave homicide, yes. Very interesting. A young girl, 18 years old, allegedly goes with her friend, who's the getaway driver, and the goal is to get hair weaves, according to the prosecution. Goes and targets the business owner, his girlfriend, the unborn child, because the girlfriend is pregnant. Right. And kills all of them.
On January 22nd, 2016, in an apartment complex parking lot in northeast Memphis, Shelby fatally shot Eddie E.J. Tate Jr., his girlfriend Edwina Thomas, and Thomas's unborn child. The killings stemmed from an argument over hair extensions. Shelby had purchased hair weaves from Tate and sought a refund. When the refund was not provided, she resorted to extreme and shocking violence. Shelby was later charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder, 1 count of reckless homicide, and 1 count of criminally negligent homicide. She pleaded not guilty, but the jury didn't buy her claim of innocence. As the verdict was read, Shelby had a shockingly emotional reaction as she collapsed to the floor.
Ms. Isaac, please stand. Count one of the verdict to read, the jury find the defendant guilty of second-degree murder as included in count one. Signed by the foreperson of the jury. Mr. Murphy, is that your verdict? Mr. Aldridge, is that your verdict? Ms. Foster, is that your verdict?
Yes.
And is that your verdict, ma'am? Is that your verdict, ma'am? Sir, is that your verdict?
Her reaction, though dramatic, was understandable. She knew as soon as that verdict was read that she would be spending the majority of the rest of her life behind bars. Her eventual sentence was 30 years to life in prison. The breakdown included 24 years for Tate's death, 4 years for Thomas's death, and 2 years for the death of the unborn child. She tried to appeal, but the Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals upheld the trial court's decisions, affirming her length sentence. The case of Elizabeth Escalona.
Take a look at this picture. This is of Elizabeth Escalona and her 2-year-old daughter. This is Jocelyn Cedillo in obviously happier times. Back on September 7th, Jocelyn was rushed to a hospital in Dallas, Texas. She was covered in bruises. Her ribs and a leg were broken. She had a concussion. This little one was in a coma. And at one point, she wasn't even expected to live.
In 2011, Elizabeth Escalona, a Dallas mother, found herself at the center of one of the most horrific child abuses the state of Texas had ever seen. Elizabeth was the mother of an adorable 2-year-old little girl named Jocelyn Cedillo. Like many young children, Jocelyn was in the middle of potty training, but would have an accident from time to time. Instead of being understanding and realizing that her daughter was just a toddler and still learning, Elizabeth would become enraged each time Jocelyn had an accident. She would often beat the poor child relentlessly as punishment. In one particularly evil abusive incident that took place in September of 2011, Elizabeth took her monstrous treatment of her defenseless child to another level. After finding out that little Jocelyn had soiled her pants, Elizabeth went into a fit of rage and began kicking Jocelyn in the stomach, struck her with a milk jug, and then glued the child's hands to an apartment wall using a strong adhesive, commonly known as superglue. When Jocelyn was later rushed to the hospital, medical staff were shocked by how severely she was injured. The assault left Jocelyn with critical injuries, including bleeding in her brain, a fractured rib, multiple bruises, and bite marks. She was hospitalized in a coma for 2 days. Medical professionals also found glue residue and paint chips on her hands, indicating the severity of the abuse. She was in such a bad state that doctors weren't sure if she would pull through, but this little girl was strong.
Jocelyn not only survived, she was just released from the hospital, but her 22-year-old mother is sitting in jail, held on $500,000 bond, and what Dallas police say is an extreme case of child abuse, some going as far as calling it torture. Here's what the Dallas Police Department says is among the things Jocelyn's mother is accused of doing. Dragging the 2-year-old by her feet from the kitchen, putting glue on her little hands and sticking them to the wall, taking a jug of milk and hitting the toddler in the stomach with it. Police say this was punishment for the child soiling her pants.
Jocelyn's mother, on the other hand, was one of the most evil mothers the nation had ever seen. The story caused shock and disgust throughout the entire community. In July 2012, Elizabeth pleaded guilty to felony injury to a child. During the sentencing hearing, prosecutors portrayed her as a monster and pointed out her history of violence and substance abuse. Elizabeth admitted to using drugs since the age of 13 and acknowledged her abusive behavior. On October 12, 2012, Elizabeth would face State District Judge Larry Mitchell to receive what turned out to be a shocking sentence. Before sealing her fate, the judge laid into Elizabeth about the true maliciousness of her actions.
On September 7, 2011, you savagely put your child to the edge of death. For this you must be punished. Please stand. I find you guilty of the offense charged. I'll set your sentence at confinement in the penitentiary for a period of 99 years.
Gasps and cries of shock filled the courtroom as the judge handed down the whopping 99-year sentence as justice was finally served for little Jocelyn. The case of Mitchell Blair. The case of Mitchell Blair is one that continues to shock and abhor people to this day. It is complicated, horrific, and deeply disturbing. It also causes some parents to not be able to help, but wonder what they would do if they ever found themselves in a similar situation. As a mother, Mitchell became deeply horrified when she discovered that 2 of her older children, a son and a daughter, had been secretly and horrifically abusing her youngest son in some of the worst ways imaginable. Disgusted and desperate for justice, Mitchell decided to kill both of the children who had been taking part in the abuse. The way she chose to do this was neither quick nor was it painless. That wasn't what she thought they deserved. Instead, she boiled a pot of water on the stove. Once it was as hot as she could possibly get it, she threw it on her oldest son, burning him and causing him excruciating pain. She then used a pillow to cut off his air supply until he was finally dead. She then placed his body in a deep freezer inside of her own apartment. Not long after, Mitchell would also kill her oldest daughter in a similarly gruesome way as punishment for what she had done to her youngest son. She then stacked her daughter's body on top of the other one, already in the deep freezer. For most people, it would be hard to imagine sleeping in the same apartment as 2 of your own deceased children, but not for Mitchell.
Let's go live to 7 Action News reporter Kimberly Craig.
But Michelle Blair herself admits to killing her 2 children, and she is angry when she puts much of the blame on the children's 2 fathers.
This continued on for months up until March of 2015, when Mitchell was evicted for not paying rent in her apartment. It was then that the bodies of the 2 children were finally discovered and the authorities were notified. It didn't take long for Mitchell to fess up to what she had done in gory detail, but she expressed no remorse for any of her actions. She was then arrested and charged with 2 counts of felony murder and tampering with a corpse. During an interview with a reporter while awaiting her trial, Mitchell's cold-hearted attitude was on full display.
Why did you take the decision to pile the bodies on top of each other in a freezer?
What do you mean?
Why did you do that?
Well, I only had 1 deep freezer. I mean, take the decision to pile the bodies on top of each other. Where was she gonna go?
This attitude stuck around for most of her dramatic trial.
To my understanding, to get a trial is to get to the truth, right? I'm already saying that I did it. I'm freely giving myself and accepting life in prison. My son is worth that to me. So what I don't understand is, from what I heard today, why the prosecutors are dragging their feet. If I'm already giving myself to you, like, hey, I did this, what's the problem? You get what I'm saying? I'm not gonna come back like, oh, I didn't understand my rights. I'm not a coward. You get what I'm saying? All I know is this, my son is 8 years old right now. he's gonna forget a lot about me, okay? When he look back at all this media coverage from these bottom feeders, I don't want him to see that I stood here like a coward.
During her trial, she would often make outbursts and have to be removed from the courtroom. She became particularly enraged when the father of her children was brought into court to testify against her.
And never be in there for his kids.
Mother,
She was always on sex sites, though, right?
Mother, listen to me.
I had to beg you to come see me. For real?
Mother, listen to
No
me.
matter how much you lie or how your lawyers lie.
You done, Mother? Listen to me.
Once Mitchell was finally convicted of the murders, she was sentenced to serve the rest of her days behind bars. To her, it was worth it because she did what she did to protect her youngest son. The murder of Lesandro Guzman Feliz. Lesandro Jr. Guzman Feliz was a 15-year-old aspiring law enforcement officer and member of the NYPD Explorers program. He was tragically murdered on June 20th, 2018 in the Bronx, New York. His death was a result of a case of mistaken identity, which shocked the community and garnered widespread attention. On the night of June 20th, 2018, Jr. was pursued by members of the Trinitarios gang, who mistakenly identified him as a rival gang member. Seeking refuge, he entered a bodega at East 183rd Street and Bathgate Avenue.
The man who owned a New York City bodega where a teen was killed is speaking about the incident. Modesto Cruz owned the Bronx convenience store where 15-year-old Lesandro Jr. Guzman Feliz sought help while trying to get away from gang members who were chasing him.
Terrified and confused about what was going on, the shop owner did not allow Jr. to hop behind the cancer in an attempt to hide from his assailants. Because of this, the assailants managed to catch up with Jr. They dragged him out of the shop and brutally attacked him with knives and a machete. Despite his injuries, Jr. managed to run towards St. Barnabas Hospital, located just a block away, but collapsed and died on the sidewalk. The attack was captured on surveillance cameras, and the graphic footage circulated widely on social media, leading to public outrage and the viral hashtag number Justice for Jr. The shop owner, who Jr. had attempted to seek help from, came forward and explained what he experienced and why he responded the way he did.
Los muchachos que estaban atrás de él estaban ya en la puerta, también empujando la puerta de entrada.
Surveillance video from the store shows a scared Guzman Feliz run into the store and try to jump behind the counter to find safety. Cruz seems to chase him away, but he says he was confused about what was going on.
En la reacción de cualquier persona que está atrás de un counter, ve a una persona saltando sobre el counter sin decirte nada, vamos a reaccionar. Pienso de esa forma porque no dijo nada.
The shop owner claimed he was terrified for his own safety, and that's why he stopped Jr. from trying to hide behind the counter. The CCTV footage from inside of the store continues to get even more graphic and disturbing as it captures the moment Jr. was dragged outside by the assailants, some pulling him by his ankles.
The video later shows a group of men drag the teen out of the store and kill him with machetes.
The shop owner explained that he called the cops multiple times after the incident happened, but he never got a response.
Eso fue a las 11:37 que comenzó el problema. A las 11:39 yo hice la primera llamada. A 11:46 hice la segunda llamada para pedir auxilio, que qué pasaba, porque no llegaba el auxilio. Y no había respuesta.
In the wake of Jr.'s gruesome death, a total of 14 suspects, all associated with the Trinitarios gang, were arrested.
5 men have already been convicted in Guzman Feliz's killing on charges of first and second degree murder, conspiracy, and gang assault. Their sentences range from life imprisonment to a minimum of 23 years in prison.
In June 2019, 5 men were convicted of first-degree murder and other charges related to the killing. Later on, in July 2022, 2 gang leaders were also convicted of murder for ordering the attack in the first place. The day that Jr.'s killer finally faced sentencing was as dramatic as it was emotional for all those affected by this heinous crime.
Jr.'s mother, Leandra, stood in court Friday asking the judge for life sentences. Instead, Daniel Fernandez, Jose Tavares, Gabriel Ramirez Concepcion, Danilo Payams Pacheco, and Ronald Urena each received 12 to 18 years, joining 8 others already behind bars, 7 which are serving life.
You may think that joining a gang is going to help you get money or protection, but in the end, it will destroy you.
Junior's mother had hoped that each and every one of the gang members who had a role in his murder would have faced the maximum sentence. In the end, only 2 of the 14 of them would be given life. However, Junior's mother says she still believes that each of her son's killers will face divine justice one day.
Judge Fabrizio spoke directly to Leandra after sentencing the last gang member, telling her after 5 years of waiting for justice, this is the last page of the final chapter of a very long case. But he understands her and her family's wounds will never close.
I'm still waiting for the divine justice. The divine justice has to come for them too.
The case of Brianna Smart.
The woman is facing a slew of felony charges after police say she knocked an officer to the ground with her car during a traffic stop.
In October 2015, Brianna Smart, a 22-year-old resident of Auburn Hills, Michigan, was involved in a serious and shocking incident with law enforcement. On October 23rd, Officer Martin Mikulicek conducted a traffic stop on Brianna for driving with a suspended license. During the stop, when the officer attempted to arrest her, Brianna resisted, re-entered her vehicle, and reversed it, striking the officer and essentially crushing him and pinning him against his patrol car. She then fled the scene without trying to help him. Officer Mikulicek sustained serious injuries, but managed to survive the horrific incident that could have easily claimed his life. Brianna, on the other hand, had landed herself in serious trouble and was arrested not long after committing the crime.
This officer was trying to arrest this woman for driving with a suspended license. That would have been a misdemeanor, but in trying to avoid that arrest, she just got herself into a whole lot more trouble. 22-year-old Brianna Rochelle Smart got teary-eyed in court as the judge read the felony charges she's facing after trying to escape arrest early this morning.
The officer went to the hospital today.
She's charged with fleeing and eluding police, resisting and assaulting a police officer, and felonious assault with a motor vehicle, all because she wanted to stay out of jail.
If Brianna had just followed Officer Mikulicek's instructions like she was supposed to, she would be facing a much less serious charge and might have even avoided spending any time in jail. But because of her disregard for the officer's life, she could be looking at decades behind bars.
She then struck his vehicle, which caused her to stop and the officer to fall to the ground. And then she sped off at a high rate of speed.
Her vehicle was found about half a mile away. Police think she got picked up and taken to a home in Auburn Hills, where she was arrested before noon.
In court for her first hearing, Brianna sobbed as the judge laid into her.
Smart told the judge she works 2 jobs and lives alone with her kids, but she was given a stern warning.
I don't want you driving any motor vehicle whatsoever. Not even a moped. Are we clear on that?
A misdemeanor snowballed into a 3-fold felony that could have been avoided with some cooperation.
In December 2015, Brianna pleaded no contest to multiple charges, including assaulting a police officer, fleeing and eluding, assault with a dangerous weapon, and driving without a valid license. Ahead of the sentencing, she attempted to tearfully apologize for her actions, but not before the judge called her out yet again.
Yes, I would like to send my deepest apologies to his office. I never meant for none of this to happen. This October 23rd.
No, let's back up. You did. Your actions were all deliberate. Okay? This isn't the time to make excuses or to justify anything you did. You need to own it.
Okay.
What you did was deliberate.
All right.
You not only ran into that officer, you ran into his vehicle, and then you took off. Not only did you endanger his life, you endangered everyone else's life that was on that road.
And I apologize. Send my deepest apologies to this officer. I'm truly sorry. I'm just happy that I pray every day that he wasn't, severely hurt. I pray every day he wasn't severely hurt and he was able to return to work. I understand that he was doing his job. I understand he's an officer of law. I understand that.
Despite her tearful apology, Brianna did not manage to avoid jail time.
So if I see you again, we're not going to have a discussion. You're going to know what the sentence is going to be. You understand that? The court, having reviewed the probation department's report and recommendation, recognizing the advisory nature of the guidelines and recognizing its discretion, having reviewed the facts and circumstances of the case, the charges, and the defendant's history. Ms. Smart, as it relates to count 1, fleeing, eluding, 3rd degree, count 2, resisting and obstructing a police officer causing injury, count 3, assault with a dangerous weapon, you're sentenced to 2 years probation, 365 days jail, 56 days credit. As it relates to count 4, driving with your license suspended, 93 days jail.
While Brianna seemed devastated by the sentence, it was nothing in comparison to the life sentence she likely would have faced if the officer she hit had not survived his injuries. The murder of rapper XXXTentacion.
Developing right now, a search for a killer in South Florida after an up-and-coming rapper is shot dead. 20-year-old XXXTentacion killed in an apparent robbery. Police say the artist, whose real name is Jose Onfroy, was leaving a Broward County motorcycle shop yesterday when he was shot by 2 men who ran up to his car.
Rapper XXXTentacion, whose real name was Jose Dwayne Ricardo Onfroy, was a popular rapper who was just at the start of what seemed to be a very successful career when his life was cut short in a shockingly tragic way. On June 18, 2018, Onfroy was in Deerfield Beach, Florida, and was leaving Riva Motorsports when he was ambushed by 2 armed men who blocked his vehicle. After a brief struggle, the assailants fatally shot Onfroy and fled with a Louis Vuitton bag containing $50,000 in cash.
He was rushed to a hospital but did not make it. Onfroy's death comes just weeks after he earned his first #1 album, which debuted March 31st.
Luckily, surveillance footage caught the entire tragic and disturbing encounter. Three different men would later be arrested and charged in connection to the rapper's murder. This included Dedrick Devonshea Williams, Michael Boatwright, and Trayvon Newsom. While Boatwright was the one who actually pulled the trigger and took the rapper's life, all 3 played a role in it, and all 3 were eventually convicted.
We, the jury, find as follows: as to the defendant, Dedrick Williams, in this case, the defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree as charged in the indictment. Count 2. We, the jury, find as follows: as to the defendant, Dedrick Williams, in this case, the defendant is guilty of armed robbery as charged in the indictment. All right, the verdicts appear to be in proper form. I will publish. In the Circuit Court of the 17th Judicial Circuit in and for Broward County, Florida, the state of Florida versus Dedrick Williams, verdict count 1. We, the jury, find as follows: as to the defendant, Dedrick Williams, in this case, the defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree as charged in the indictment. Count 2. We, the jury, find as follows: as to the defendant, Dedrick Williams, in this case, the defendant is guilty of armed robbery as charged in the indictment. Count 1. We, the jury, find as follows: as to the defendant, Michael Boatwright, in this case, the defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree as charged in the indictment. During the course of the crime committed, did the defendant, Michael Boatwright, actually possess a firearm? Yes. The defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree as charged in the indictment. During the course of the crime committed, did the defendant, Trayvon Newsom, actually possess a firearm?
Each of the men who played a role in the murder were sentenced to life imprisonment. Not one of them showed any sort of emotion or remorse as the sentence was handed down.
The rest of your life in prison. From here, you will go and be placed in a cell that has a stainless steel slab that's attached to the wall. That's your bed. And next to it is a stainless steel sink and a stainless steel toilet. That's the furniture that you have in that cell.
The case of Blandine Idumbo. In February 2018, Blandine Idumbo, who was then just 17 years old, was involved in a fatal incident at a Best Western Plus motel on Manitou Drive in San Antonio, Texas. She and 20-year-old Tariq Mike met with Robert Patterson, 25, and his girlfriend to discuss a plan to steal cars and sell their parts. During the meeting, Mike unexpectedly drew a firearm and shot Patterson twice, killing him instantly. He also shot and seriously injured Patterson's girlfriend, who luckily survived. Following the shootings, both Idumbo and Mike fled the scene. Idumbo was later arrested and charged with capital murder. She denied being the one responsible for Patterson's death.
The hearing began with a denial from the defendant.
No, I did not pull that trigger.
20-year-old Blandine Idumbo is talking about a fatal shooting that occurred at the Northside Motel in 2018. She and 20-year-old Tariq Mike were at the motel planning a car theft and parts chopping scheme with another couple, according to police. The plan went bad, they say, and Mike shot 25-year-old Robert Patterson to death.
He's standing over Robert for about 3-4 seconds, and that's when 2 shots went off.
Nevertheless, the teen was later convicted, and she was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Ahead of her sentencing, her mother issued a tearful apology, claiming she let her daughter down.
Tariq Mike were at the motel planning a car theft and parts chopping scheme with another couple, according to police. The plan went bad, they say, and Mike shot 25-year-old Robert Patterson to death.
He's standing over Robert for about 3-4 seconds, and that's when 2 shots went off. And Robert didn't move at all.
She said Mike also shot and seriously wounded Patterson's girlfriend. They then fled in the girlfriend's car.
I was in shock because somebody who I thought was a friend to me, I never thought that he would just mercilessly execute 2 people.
They were later arrested and charged with capital murder. Mike pled guilty to a reduced charge of murder and was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Idumbo was charged with aggravated robbery.
It is the order of the court that you be sentenced to 20 years confinement.
During the hearing, Idumbo's mother with an apology that brought her daughter to tears.
I'm sorry I failed you.
The case of Kai Andrea Cook. In March of 2017, a Daytona Beach high school student named Kai Andrea Cook took part in a crime that would later change her life forever. Alongside her then-boyfriend, Kendrick Bass, Cook used a social media app to lure victims under the pretense of casual encounters. Once the victims arrived, Bass would ambush them with a firearm to steal their vehicles. But in this particular incident, a struggle ensued, leading to the shotting and injury of a victim. Cook was arrested and charged for the incident, but was later offered a plea deal that she decided to accept. The only problem was that she misunderstood what her plea deal actually meant and thought it meant that she would be avoiding jail time altogether. Her shocked and panicked reaction in court when she learned her sentence went viral.
She's guilty of all 3 charges, sentence you to 20 years in state prison.
Cook's mother could be heard wailing loudly as her daughter's sentence was handed down, causing Cook to begin crying harder. Cook was allowed to withdraw her initial plea due to miscommunication with her defense attorney. In May 2018, she was resentenced to 11 years in prison, followed by 20 years of probation. While some of these criminals seemed to expect the sentences they were handed down, others seemed shocked as they learned they would have to pay the price for their evil acts. Clearly, the lesson to be learned from each of these cases is that if you can't do the time, don't do the crime.